WOKB, Winter Garden, Orlando.
Welcome to another edition of Real Family Talk. This is your host, Jay Real. Hope everybody's having a great Tuesday.
Hello. Welcome to Real Family Talk. This is your host, Jay Real. It's hump day. It's Wednesday, y'all. I'm excited, man. You know, I'm excited every Wednesday evening. So good times. Have a good show tonight. We got Jeremy's in the building. How you doing, Jeremy?
I'm in here. I'm good. You know, I missed last week. I had a good excuse, though. I called in advance to let everybody know I was excused last week. I was excused, you know. I don't want to get a whooping. You know, my brother still whoops.
We got Jason Henry's joining us tonight, too, y'all. How you doing, Jason?
I'm good, man.
You're good, man?
I'm good. I'm running, but I'm good.
He's good, man. He's a busy guy. I like that, though. Then we got some other people that'll be joining us this evening as well. I know Jason has a guest that we'll be talking to in a few minutes, too. So it's going to be a good jam-packed show. It's got a kind of political Wednesday today. A lot of political topics we'll be discussing today, kind of educating people on some of the things that have happened over the last few days here.
You know, I thought about you earlier. When I was in the gym on my lunch break, they were showing the Cardinals and Steelers Super Bowl.
Yes.
Yeah.
I saw that.
On TV, and I'm like, I wonder, just by chance, is he watching this?
No, I was not. No, I was not. But that's always good to see Steelers on TV, man. We'll be back next year.
I think that was the last time they won, I believe.
We'll be back next year, though.
Hey.
Dallas will be home, but we'll be back.
Oh, come on now. Come on, man.
He had to throw that in there.
Yeah, I always got to get that jab.
I was reading, speaking of football, I saw an article the other day. I guess Brandon Weeden is your new backup quarterback in Dallas over there. I'm sure you're excited about that, Brandon Weeden. He did so well in Cleveland.
Brandon Weeden was 5-15.
I guess they'll bring him to Dallas.
And you know who they just picked up today, though, through a trade? Rolando McClain.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they did.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Second time coming out of retirement.
Yeah.
But we needed some middle linebacker help because Sean Lee went on IR today. So hopefully he works out.
That's actually a good pickup.
You know what? If he plays the way he did in Oakland, they'll be fine. But if he decides I don't want to play any, football anymore, which he did to the Ravens last year, then we screwed. So,
well, let's put it this way: you can't be in a worse position, no matter what he does.
That's true. If he doesn't work out, he doesn't work out. So.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, we'll see what happens, man.
Absolutely.
We're right around the corner. It's almost August.
I can't wait. Cannot wait. I think it's like a
preseason.
month.
Preseason's almost
we got
here,
like,
man.
5 weeks until training camp? No, 4 weeks until
training camp.
No,
should
like
be
3
right
weeks until training camp,
training
and then a
should be
month.
right
Until
it's not long.
Until the first preseason game.
We're close,
so
man. We're close.
I'm geeked.
I am too, sir.
Get all this fake football out the way.
Hey, man, don't be hating on the World Cup. I've been at it, man. I've been on my World Cup. I was upset yesterday.
I was not upset because I was not watching the World Cup.
I was just, if you're not watching the World Cup, you're missing something. Now I know y'all
sleep.
No, I know y'all think American football is the thing, but those guys on average they make a lot more money than American football players. Just to let you know. So everybody pushing their kids to be the quarterbacks and all this stuff. You want to play 20 years, make it $15 million a year, tax free. Let's throw that in there now, tax free, because you're playing overseas making that kind of money, right? Tax free. Push them into soccer. I'm just saying, you got a much better chance. You are
passionate about that.
I'm just telling you, you got the Mexican league, you got South American league.
We played as children.
You got the English league. You got the Italian league. You got the Spanish league. You got leagues in Russia. They all making millions of dollars now. So that's how many shots you got instead of just say, NFL. No, you got choices.
Good.
You got millions of dollars, got tax free.
You sat down and researched this.
No, I mean I've been following the game for a while. We started playing when we were young, and the older I get, the more I'm starting to realize the business of it.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? The business of
Well,
it.
you just moved to Florida and you don't have to pay income taxes.
Well, no, that's the state. The Fed's still coming after you.
Oh, that's true.
But you go over there, they can't touch your money. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you got to come back. I'm sure that.
Yeah, you got to come back, but you just keep it over there. Just stay with
I like Neanderthal sports.
Just that's a little Neanderthal. Hey, you see them boys play? Well, see, y'all ain't watch the game.
No. I'm talking about you get hit. And
gotta watch the game. What I'm trying to tell you. Hey, like I said, I play soccer coming up. We did not play like that. I'm telling you,
are they tackling out there? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
They're very close. When that free ball that we used to run to, you just ain't just the first person who get the foot in. It's the first person who throw the elbow, who push the other one out the way. And it's real physical. It's a lot more physical than I really realized. These days you got better camera angles, so you really see everything going on. I'm talking about they physical. It's
fun to play.
They scrapping for the rebound. Let's put it like that. Let's put it like that. I guess that's the best correlation you can do when you kind of push a little bit. It's like scrapping for the rebound.
All right.
Imagine Oakley and Mason scrapping for a rebound for all y'all old heads out there. Charles Oakley and Anthony Mason going for a rebound.
I met Mason at All-Star Weekend, and I was walking because I think not Oscar Robinson, Bill Russell and Dikembe Mutombo and all these other people were there, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. And I see Anthony Mason, and I'm like, yo, that's Anthony Mason. Yeah. And he shook my hand, and I think he broke about 5 or 6 bones in it.
It's a big dude. It's a big dude.
I mean, huge, man.
Dude.
All right, man. Well, soccer,
we lost
football,
yesterday.
We'll see. Well, we're out of
benefits,
but that's not surprising.
Hey, but we had Tim Howard, the goalie, had the most. He had the most. Yeah, he had the most saves of a goalie ever since they start keeping track of the saves in the World Cup game. We had the youngest American scored yesterday, 19-year-old kid out of Tampa. He came in during the extra time. His first time he touched the ball, he kicked it in. He kind of put us back in because they came and jumped 2 goals on. If you watch soccer, if you up 2 goals, that's almost like a blowout.
Is it?
So.
I now know how I feel. Now I know how people feel when I talk about politics.
Probably to some degree, but not that bad.
I'm just saying, soccer just ain't for me. It's just not. That's not my wheelhouse, man.
I understand, but it's probably because I played it, so I kind of.
Yeah, I can dig that.
You know what I'm saying?
You have intimate knowledge.
I kind of understand it, so it's like I don't know when you get in it. It's like when you get in it,
watching
it's exciting.
Grass grow and paint dry.
Hey, for your country.
For your country. Huh?
That's the out right there.
Yeah, there you go. That's the out for your country.
Oh man!
Y'all go ahead.
I watched it too, Chairman.
Thank you.
So you're not.
How you doing, Miss McCray? That's Miss McCray, y'all. She's in the building now.
Pardon my tardiness. Hey, everybody. Hey.
Man, real quick before our guests come on, I just wanted to talk real quick. On Saturday, this past Saturday, Miss Tamia Brinson, Rejoice Magazine, she sponsored a small business forum last week, last Saturday down at the Hiawassee Library. Was able to attend. Just wanted to comment. Real great information were presented at the event. It was kind of led in terms of speakers by Representative Bruce Antone, District 6 candidate Roberta Walton were the 2 main lead people talking, and real good information that they had. I came away definitely impressed by Miss Roberta Walton. Like I said, I don't vote in the district, so this is not an endorsement or anything, but but I did come away really impressed with her knowledge of things that you could do to help out small businesses. Really impressed with her. And Representative Bruce Antone, as always, was a character.
That's a good way to describe it.
As always, he's a character. But again, he also, the thing I like about him, regardless of the fact that he is a character, he always comes across as being very passionate about the things that he is into, and that was definitely evident at the forum on Saturday. So shout out to Tamia Brinson, rejoicemagazine.net.
I'll do a shameless plug
event
for Tamia. She has her political show starting on the 6th of July at 10:30 in the morning on Bright House Channel 49. So tune into that, and I'll say that because I'm a part of it. So.
There you go, man. There you go.
She's
all right.
dope. She's dope.
She is. Shout out to Tamia Brinson, man. All right, our guest is here. He's ready to go. I'll let you introduce him, Jason.
Yeah. So I would really and truly like to take a deep breath before I read his bio. How I came to know this gentleman, Mr. Attorney James Smith, is we were working together on a project. Didn't materialize, but we became Facebook friends, and what I enjoy is when someone has a pensive point of view, when you can, inject thoughtfulness into, your frame of mind. That's something that I can respect. And anytime I see Mr. Smith on Facebook, and when we've talked, he's always had a thoughtful point of view. So I wanted to talk about the end of the 2013 Supreme Court term, where we had a lot of noise surrounding one particular case. It was Burwell versus Hobby Lobby. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about it. It's either a war on women or, a right for the government to tell businesses, what they can and cannot do. And I know for Mr. Smith, he would give us the legal perspective. Instead of, having so much emotion and noise, I figured he would be the person that we can go to kind of trudge through that. So he is a nationally recognized expert in the area of criminal law and litigation, and he is on the faculty of the National Criminal Defense College and the Florida Public Defender Prosecutor Training Program, and he will be a featured speaker this summer at the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers annual meeting in Philadelphia. He is currently a professor of law at FAMU College of Law, where he teaches evidence and trial practice. Mr. Smith, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fine, gentlemen. How about yourself?
Doing all right, sir.
Doing well.
So I wanted to talk to you specifically about three cases: Burwell versus Hobby Lobby, Harris versus Quinn, and Diaz versus California. Before I get into explaining those cases, I really wanted to get your perspective on what happened with Hobby Lobby, because on one hand, I continue to see that this was a war on women, that the Supreme Court took the right to choose away from some women as far as their contraception is concerned, that, my boss shouldn't be in my business. And I wanted to get the legal perspective on this ruling and how it truly impacts the employees of closely held corporations like Hobby Lobby. And from what I understand, there are still 16 different contraceptive options that women will have. So what is the legal perspective on that case?
Okay, and first off, I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come on your program. I've had the chance to listen to it for quite some time, and I really find it to always be informative. The legal perspective. If you look at this case, the real issue that the court had to decide in this particular case was religious freedom. If you go back and you look at the facts of the case, you'll see that this case started with a law that was passed that actually dates back to the Clinton administration, and it deals with religious freedom. Now, if you flash forward and then you go to the Obama administration, we had the passage of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. And what that law did is it mandated that employers of organizations with a certain number of people had to provide certain things in their health plan, particularly with regard to women's reproductive health and contraception. Mm-hmm. Well, the owners of Hobby Lobby, and like a lot of cases, this case actually was a result of two businesses that ended up suing. Their argument was, we have religious beliefs which conflict with the requirement that we provide certain contraceptives. And so they ended up suing, and their argument was that we are not like other businesses, other corporations, given the fact that we are closely held corporations. We have a right under federal law to not be forced to engage in actions that violate our fundamental religious beliefs. And so the Supreme Court ended up agreeing with them. The majority opinion that was written by Justice Alito essentially decided the case on those grounds. Now, from a legal perspective, federal law now says that if the federal government is going to pass a law, and that law has a substantial or fundamental impact on an individual's exercise of the freedom of religion, the government has to show that it's going to serve a compelling purpose and that the way in which the law is implemented is in the way, right, that is least impactful on the person's religious beliefs. Using that test, the court ended up ruling that Obamacare failed that test. And so as a result, that's why the court ruled that the requirement to impose these contraceptive options was a violation of individuals' First Amendment rights.
You know, that's interesting to me because I read Justice Ginsburg's dissent, and it was it seemed to me that it was filled with emotion. She said that, the court is, potentially venturing into a minefield. There was even an article that listed 8 of the best lines from her dissent because, it seemed that, she was particularly angry. The other part of that is, from what I understand, the government, specifically the Obama administration, may still offer contraceptive options to women, or they may offer the options that Hobby Lobby chooses not to. Is that a part of this ruling that we saw, that the Obama administration may be able to step in and fill that gap?
Absolutely. And while I'm sympathetic to Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act and the need to make certain that insurance plans provide options for women, in all honesty, I think it's hyperbole to argue that the ruling reflects a war on women. The basic fact remains is that no one, as a result of this ruling, is going to be denied access to these contraceptives. The issue is just whether or not these closely held corporations are going to be required to provide them and engage in what the opinion refers to as cost sharing. So there are alternatives here. Frankly, to be honest with you, this is an incident, I believe, where the law intersects with politics. If you read this case, which I did, it ends up, I think, making a very strong argument, frankly, for a single-payer system. One of the things that I think this ruling ends up showing is the problems that we have in this society, where we end up requiring that health insurance be provided as it is primarily through an employer mandate. But that's another issue. But, frankly, the result of this ruling is not that the women who work for these closely held corporations are going to be denied access to the contraceptives. The issue is simply who's going to be required to pay for them.
Now, and I guess the other side deals with closely held corporations. One of the things that I continue to see and I continue to read is that this is a slippery slope now, that more corporations will attempt to hide behind this decision and behind, the Religious Freedom Act as it concerns to healthcare or as it relates to healthcare. This only relates to those type of corporations. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. I mean, this only relates to the closely held corporations. And again, if you read the opinion, you'll see that a lot of the commentary here, frankly, is not accurate. I mean, while I certainly support, again, a system or a provision out there to provide coverage for these contraceptives, I think it's important to look at this case on the grounds in which it was decided. And the court decided this case on the grounds of religious freedom, based, frankly, upon a law which said that the government has to meet a certain test if it passes any law that impacts on an individual's exercise of the freedom of religion. So I think, again, to say that this is reflective of a war on women is simply not accurate. All this simply says is that closely held corporations that have religious beliefs should not be required to engage in actions or subsidize actions which violate those religious beliefs.
So piggybacking on that idea, the another thing that I've been reading is that now potentially you're going to see other closely held corporations like this that maybe they're Muslim or maybe they're Jewish related, and so they're going to potentially bring cases that are now going to fundamentally change how they're able to do business with their or provide services to the employees. Do you see that kind of leading us down that road where other kind of religious groups are stepping in and now suing to kind of change some of the things that they're mandated to do?
Potentially. I mean, I think there may be some savvy attorneys out there who'll start to, comb through federal and state statutes and say, this law here, prevents me from being able to exercise my freedom of religion or has an impact on my right to freedom of religion. Again, though, I think the reason that this particular case was decided the way it was, frankly, was because, and let's just be honest, it may sound cynical, but I believe that the court is a political institution. And I think that there are a number of factors that led to the decision here in this particular case. Had this ruling actually resulted in the employees of Hobby Lobby not being able to get access to the contraceptives, I'm not so certain that we would have seen the result of the case that we saw. I think the court ended up simply saying because there is an alternative, because there is an option, because the employees are still going to get access to the contraceptives, but just in a different way, I think they felt comfortable taking the position that they took. But is it likely that there's some enterprising, lawyers out there who are going to perhaps try to take some of the rationales in this particular decision and then apply them in other circumstances? Absolutely.
It's for me, and one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk to you about this is because I did write something about it, but when and this is unfortunate, but when I actually had time to sit down and specifically read the dissent, the main opinion, and the case, I'm like, well, I'm not sure, honestly, because there was so much noise surrounding this that I needed a different perspective. Like, I needed someone who could provide a real answer instead of something that was just wrapped in emotion, because everything that I saw
Everything's wrapped in
on
emotion.
Monday, especially when it comes to the Supreme Court, everything that I saw on Monday was war on women. They're taking away, a woman's right to choose. And on the other side, it was, well, I don't want the government infringing on my business, telling me what I can and cannot do. And I said, well, there has to be a middle ground in this somewhere. Instead of, everybody thinks they're a legal scholar on SCOTUS decision day. Every single person. And, the explanation that you just gave, I think is perfect. It was simple and to the point.
Absolutely. I think you have to understand, too, that you really have to be cautious when listening to analysis of Supreme Court decisions, particularly when you're hearing them in an election year.
Mm-hmm.
There's no secret of the fact that we have some highly contested midterm elections coming up, and most of the people who are talking about these opinions, I think they have three things in common. First, they probably didn't read the entire opinion before commenting. Second, they're political operatives who have their own independent agendas. And then third, these are individuals who were probably the same individuals who, like Fox News did a few years ago, made the mistake of just reading the first couple of paragraphs of the opinion relating to the Affordable Care Act. I'm sure you remember that famous incident where it said that the law had been overturned when that was exactly the opposite of the law. So I think most journalists should probably impose a rule, and that rule should be before someone is invited on to give a comment about an opinion, the first question should be, have you actually read the entire opinion? Not just the syllabus, not just the blurbs or the headlines.
I told you he was thoughtful.
Imagine that.
So the second case that I wanted to talk about is Harris versus Quinn, and this deals with unions, and this was another one that had a lot of emotion with it, where, I even saw a hashtag that said this was union busting. And, this ruling, would end up destroying the coffers of unions across the country, where in essence, and, correct me on this if I'm wrong, Harris, I think her name was Pamela Harris, she did not want fees exacted from her paycheck to pay into a union. She's not technically, I guess, an employee, where she stays home with her disabled son and she takes care of him, receives a check from the state as well as Medicaid, and she did not feel that she should be forced to pay union dues. In this case, do you see the decision, I believe, in 1977, Abood, I believe, versus the Detroit Board of Education, do you see this as more of a slippery slope than Burrell versus Hobby Lobby, where unions may have something to worry about down the road, where their power and, specifically their financial power may be taken away from them?
Absolutely. I think of all the cases, if you're progressive, the case that should concern you the most from this particular term is this one. It wasn't a death blow, but it was certainly close. And the reason that it was close is because it takes away another funding mechanism that unions can engage in to raise funds. And you're exactly right. In this particular instance, you had someone who was essentially saying that as a result of her status, she didn't believe that she should be required to have these dues or fees taken in order to support the collective bargaining efforts. The ironic thing, and the thing that's frustrating for someone like me who is a big supporter of unions, I think if you look at a lot of the protections that we have in the workplace today, most of them are the result of union advocacy.
Mm-hmm.
Things that a lot of people take for granted, we wouldn't have in the modern American workplace.
And not to cut you off, but if I'm not mistaken, a lot of what she has is covered by unions. Like, she still has protection.
Absolutely. And that's the frustrating thing, I think, for unions in this particular instance, is that they are going out there and fighting on behalf of people who are collecting the benefits of union organizing, and yet they don't want to contribute, right, to those particular efforts. And so in this particular instance, what the court ended up saying is, right, for a situation like you had in this particular instance, they're not required to give those fees or those dues.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's ironic is I wish the unions would come back and then say, okay, if people decide that they want to opt out, then perhaps there's some mechanism or way for us to be able to make sure that they don't get the benefits. Because I can tell you, that the same people who are going to say they don't want to pay these fees or the dues, well, they're certainly going to turn around and accept any of the benefits that have been provided. But that, I guess, unfortunately tends to be human nature. But certainly, I mean, this could have been a death blow. If the Supreme Court had overruled the dues, then that definitely would have been the death blow for unions. I mean, if anyone knows anything about politics or labor unions, you know that they're really at the lowest point in terms of the amount of money they're able to raise, in terms of the number of workplaces that are effectively unionized, and there's a lot of advocacy. And I think a lot of people don't focus in on exactly the reason why we have this anti-labor union effort. It's not so much because people are opposed to what unions are trying to do. I mean, certainly they are. But the primary reason I think they're doing this is because labor unions are some of the most effective organizations in terms of raising funds for Democratic candidates and progressive candidates.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if you can deal a death blow to them or cripple them, then that is certainly going to hurt the Democratic Party.
What do you see happening with unions as it relates to maybe even this case in the next couple for the Supreme Court? Say it was a body blow. Do you think that death blow is coming?
With regard to two things. And the first is whether or not the Republicans are able to take back the Senate. And then I think that also depends on what happens in the next presidential election. One of the things that I wanted to mention during this particular segment is that the decisions that took place in this term really show why elections have consequences and why elections matter. In this particular term, look at the cases that we're going to talk about this evening. These are cases which, for the most part, were 5-4 decisions, or they were decisions where the court was split in some way. And you can clearly see not just a conservative or a liberal bloc, but I think, frankly, you see a Republican and a Democratic bloc. You know anything about Justice Alito? The one thing you have to know is that this is an individual who, like a lot of Republican judges, was identified early on, not just because of the fact that he was deemed as a brilliant legal scholar, but because people knew that he would be a reliable vote for certain Republican interests. And he certainly hasn't disappointed during the time that he's been on the bench. One of the things that stands out to me concerning Justice Alito, you may remember a few years ago when the Citizens United decision was handed down, afterwards during a State of the Union address, President Obama, in a very forceful fashion, talked about how he disagreed with the Supreme Court and the ruling in Citizens United. And you could see Justice Alito sitting there in the well of the House and shaking his head.
He did.
Something that was extraordinary, right, for a Supreme Court justice to do. Normally the Supreme Court justices, they come there, they stand, and they simply sit down and do nothing at all. They don't show any emotion. Well, Justice Alito is doing exactly what his supporters wanted him to do, and that is to be a reliable vote to block a lot of the initiatives passed by this administration.
As an aside, you mentioned Alito, Chief Justice Roberts. A lot of progressives have specifically labeled this court as an activist court because a lot of the decisions that they've made have not gone in their favor. There is maybe a slow drumbeat that Justice Ginsburg needs to retire so that President Obama can name a replacement before he leaves office. Of course, we're speculating, but do you think that is something that she should consider?
I can understand the frustration and the concern on the part of a number of progressives. Certainly, this president has encountered opposition, I think, unparalleled. If you look at the rate of confirmation of the judges that he's tried to put in, if you look at the opposition that he's received, I mean, I can't think of another time when you've had a president who's given a State of the Union address and then someone has yelled from the well of the House, "You lie." So I can see why some people would be concerned that if she doesn't step down, in the next election, presidential election, if President Obama is succeeded by a Republican, that we may have lost an opportunity. But I think there's another school of thought here, which is, and I happen to believe this, not because I'm a supporter, but just because I look at the polls, I think it's more likely than not that our next president is going to be Hillary Clinton. And I think for a number of reasons, frankly, the primary reason being race, she will probably have an easier time dealing with the Congress than this president has had. If Justice Ginsburg steps down, does anyone really believe that the Senate is going to easily approve a nominee put on by this president? I mean, in fact, over the past couple of years, you've had some Republicans actually making the argument that the president is not entitled to appoint judges because he's trying to stack courts. They've argued that somehow he's required to appoint conservatives or Republicans. So I can understand perhaps her argument, which is, I'm on the court, as long as I can serve, I'm going to serve. According to a number of people close to her, however, she believes that if she were to step down, chances are the president wouldn't be able to appoint someone who is progressive as she is.
I really enjoyed reading her dissent. I thought,
Absolutely.
I really and truly thought that what she put on paper was fantastic.
Sure.
So before we let you go, there was another case, California versus DS, that I wanted to talk about because it relates to smartphones, and the court unanimously decided that that police need a warrant to seize or search your smartphone. I wanted to talk about that case because I remember when this was being discussed, there was, I guess, people on one side that said that, this is no different than your wallet. This is no different than having something where you can hide potential, criminal activity from police officers. And the second part of that is I read your Facebook post on it. It was long, but it was really and truly thoughtful. And I wanted to get your thoughts, I guess, on audio about how this case, I guess, will impact law enforcement when it comes to technology, because technology is changing so quickly. Are we going to see more cases like this, and do you see it going in the other direction soon?
This is perhaps the most surprising case of the term, to be honest with you. I mean, I followed this one closely because this is the area that I'm most, interested in that criminal procedure, particularly search and seizure. The Fourth Amendment, supposedly protects us from the government with regard to the government engaging in unreasonable searches and seizures. But if you know anything, all right, about Fourth Amendment jurisprudence over the past 25 or 30 years, it's that anytime law enforcement has come up with a technique and it's been challenged in the courts, the court has carved out an exception. And so, one of the things that I teach my students in my law school classes with regard to criminal procedure is that the Fourth Amendment has so many exceptions that, frankly, a lot of the protections have been lost. So when this case was decided, the way in which it was decided, and when it was decided unanimously, I'll be honest with you, I almost thought that I was dreaming. I was afraid that I was going to wake up and find out that this was, you ever have one of those dreams where you think you're a millionaire and you wake up in a position that you've always been. But, to talk about this case, it really deals with the whole notion of what's known as the search incident to a lawful arrest. And it's been settled law for quite some time that when law enforcement engages in a lawful arrest of an individual, they're allowed to conduct a very limited search of the individual's person and the area under their immediate control. In this particular case here, and it actually started off with two separate cases that ended up being consolidated and then decided by the Supreme Court. In both of those separate cases, what the law enforcement agents had done is when they arrested the individuals without a warrant, they searched the individual's smartphones, and then they ended up finding information that was incriminating and ultimately led to their convictions. And what the court ended up saying was, can't do that. Smartphones are not like a wallet. They're not like other pieces of property. You're talking about, something that, while it may be the size of a deck of cards, carries an individual's entire life and personal histories. I mean, if you're like me, everything about you is going to be in there.
Absolutely.
Health information, bank information, information about, your relationships, your family, and so forth. And it's a relatively, I think, controversial ruling. All the Supreme Court was saying is that if you want to search the phone, you have to go and get a warrant. The fact that you could get agreement on a search and seizure issue between someone like Justice Thomas and Justice Sotomayor shows you just how outrageous the government's conduct was in this particular case. It's rare that you're going to see those two justices, right, on both extremes of the court agree on a matter of public policy with regard to search and seizure. But I also think it's, and I hate to sound like a cynic here, the reason the court may have ruled the way they did is because this is something that touches their lives. It's something they can relate to. Usually most cases involving search and seizure deal with things where, frankly, people will look and say, but these people are criminals anyway, so we don't have a lot of sympathy for what happened to them, and we think what law enforcement's doing here is unreasonable. But we all have smartphones, and we all realize that we could be stopped for any reason, suspicion of a DUI, suspicion of your tags not being valid. And I think the justices to themselves, you know what, this could be me. This could be my son. This could be my law clerk. We don't want to give the police that much power. And that's why they ended up ruling the way they did. So I think it's a lesson for lawyers when you're trying to advocate on behalf of your clients before whatever tribunal it is, be it a county court or the Supreme Court, to the extent that you can make the case real and personal for the judges or the justices, you enhance the opportunity for success.
Mr. James Smith, thank you so much for joining us tonight, sir.
Yes, thank you, James Smith.
You have, honestly, you've cleared up a lot for me, especially as it relates to Hobby Lobby. That was the one case that, honestly, I could not get away from the noise, and I just needed clarification on a lot of things, and you provided that. And with the smartphone case, as well as Harris versus Quinn, fantastic, man. So thank you again for joining the Real Family Talk crew tonight. I hope that in the future that we can call on you again.
Absolutely, gentlemen. Look forward to it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
James
Attorney Smith.
Yes,
and
thank you.
Also, I wanted to say you did help me a lot with the Hobby Lobby explanation because of all the noise and, of course, being a woman and some of the things that I read. Of course, they're inciting that side of everything, and you broke it down in a way that I can now maybe understand a little bit more what the heck I was reading. 'Cause like Jason said, trying to read those things, like, what?
Yeah.
I'm not of mind. So I go to what's easy for me to understand, and then that's already kind of leading into
Absolutely.
my thinking. So thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you, ma'am. All right. You all have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Yeah, I knew when we Jason was going to bring up this topic, Miss McCrae, that you were going to ride with the popular opinion.
No, that man was preaching up here. He was telling the truth.
I understand
And
that. I'm
you
just
don't
saying
wanna
what
admit
you
it,
were thinking
Mr. Republican.
before you heard from the attorney.
No.
I knew that you
No.
would, as everybody's selling. That's been one frustration with all of these cases. The one in particular was Hobby Lobby, because you just hear the chatter is just so ridiculous that they have decided, or Hobby Lobby has decided, to end all kind of birth control for all of their employees.
That's
and it's
not
like,
true.
that's
Yeah.
not even close.
That's
not even
not
close
what it
to what
said.
the truth is. But some kind of, blow against women.
But
It's
you
like
have to dig
It's one thing they said. All they
to
said
get
was,
there.
we'll give you any kind of birth control you want, but those Plan B related pills that are out there as well, we do not want to put that on our insurance. That's all they said.
And if you want it, the Obama administration is probably going to take care of it.
The
for you.
Obama administration is going to take care of it. Exactly. So that was the thing. You read it on Facebook and just listening to reading different comments that people make, and it's just like, do you people even read? Because
No.
clearly,
But that's the problem.
this
Like,
is not what's going
the
on.
real information is buried
It is.
beyond, because people want clicks for their websites, so they're going to put up the most alarming thing. Oh no, you're taking away my right as a woman. Click. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Boycotting.
It's one. Yeah, because you read. Even you go to the Sentinel, you go to Slate, you go to The Nation, you go to all these different websites, and the one thing we have to remember, and he made a good point about it, is when we're reading about legal cases, especially as it relates to decision day or end of term day for the Supreme Court, we shouldn't listen to commentators. And, you can say I'm guilty of that, too, because I had something up about it, and I'm like, I'm not trying to be sensational, but you want to give information and inject your opinion a little bit, but I didn't go to law school.
Yeah.
So, and he said a lot of people are commenting on this and they have not read the decision. Justice Ginsburg's dissent was 35 pages long.
I was about to say, it's very long. I was like, listen, honey.
I don't have time.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are going to sit there and you're going to get through the second paragraph and like, I am so confused and lost.
The verbiage.
Yes. So, you really and truly need individuals like Mr. Smith to kind of break that information down for you. And that was actually a really good article on Slate.com where this guy's a law professor at the I think it was the Chicago School of Law, University of Chicago School of Law. And he talked about, he said, you know what, Justice Ginsburg, it was sensational, it was emotional, but our argument wasn't that strong. And he broke down reasons why, and he gave a legal opinion about that decision. But a lot of people, you don't want to read that. You want to read something that's going to trigger your emotion. And when you see War on Women, it's, oh my gosh, the court is activist. Exactly. And there are some men up there trying to make decisions on behalf of women. Well, no, there was some legal precedents here. And especially for liberals and progressives, maybe you want to be upset at President Clinton, because if he's the one that signed this act into, I'm just saying,
Jason
this happens a lot.
Jason Henry, what
That
are you
happens a
talking
lot.
about,
Stop.
sir? You cannot.
You stop it.
That is not allowed, sir. You know better.
Listen, I wish Mr. Smith could have seen Jimmy's face when he said that looking at the trends and paying attention that Hillary Clinton will be the next president. His head almost exploded right here in the studio, people.
Oh, man. All I'm going to say is the last thing we need is another Democratic president.
Oh,
God.
See?
Wow.
Spoken like a true Republican.
He jumped out the window on that one.
Ooh, you letting your colors
No,
show tonight, sir.
And, to be honest, if Hillary Clinton does win the presidency, her presidency, I agree with him, it's going to be completely different from what we've seen from President Obama for two reasons. One, she understands and plays the game really well. And so like her husband, she's going to find ways to work with assuming you still have what you have now, which is a Republican House and a Democratic Senate. So she'll find ways to work with them, even if it transitions and it becomes a Republican Senate. I think she'll find ways to transition and at least get some of the things that she'd like through, not maybe necessarily to the extent that President Obama did, especially when you're talking about his first 2 years in office. But she'll find a way to manipulate the system to be able to get some of the things.
I don't know, man. There was a Pew Research poll that said
so?
we've never been this divided as far as partisanship is concerned.
But I
they
think
even
it
viewed
starts
it as
at
two
the top,
mountains.
though.
Like the blue mountain was way over here and the red here. Like we are, continuing to slide each other and to become more divided as the years pass.
But I think a part of that, though, it also starts at the top, though, because I think if you look at the top, while the president is just as hard-headed, if you will, as a lot of the members of Congress, which is why I think we have the deadlock that we have. Because even when it, talk about the latest issue that he is, as they like to call him, the imperialistic president, when it comes to immigration, there's bills. The House has an immigration bill that they've passed. The Senate has an immigration bill that they passed. So clearly there's some area of compromise somewhere between where the Senate is and where the House is. And it comes from the top to be able to find that middle ground. It exists. There's always middle ground. They found it in the past, where everybody didn't get what they like. But there's a middle ground. But you have to.
Somebody took a match and
I think you have to come to the table and at least be willing to listen. Right there, he's already shut the door on any kind of conversations he wanted to have, could have had, and I'll make an executive. Come on, man. I read your Hyperlando blog about him and his executive orders, and how he's when you count the numbers, he's still far less than what former President Bush was. But I think the impact, though, of your statement was how President Bush made his orders. You talked about in the article, I think on his last year or something like that, you said he did a couple hundred executive orders. Yeah. Last year, a couple hundred executive orders. That's a lot. The difference is, though, a couple hundred executive orders on your way out the door, which lets me know they didn't really have a whole lot of impact on what we were doing as a country. Whereas the executive orders that the president is doing, it is fundamentally changing some of the things that we're doing as a country. And I think that's where the difference lies. Not that I'm going to call him the imperialistic president, Miss McCray.
No choice.
But I mean, come on.
That's the only way he thinks done. And they are doing it on purpose. And when you talk about a different presidency, sure, it's going to be different.
What else do you have to do?
I told you, it's going to, instead of racism, we're going to see sexism. Rampant sexism.
Well, you saw that when she ran the first time.
Right, but it's going to be even worse.
Because you have a lot of men that are going to take orders from a woman.
Exactly. So it's a whole new ball game. What I did think was interesting was your point, and I hadn't heard that. I guess that's that real political savvy stuff when you were talking about the judge maybe needing to step aside so that he can appoint.
Yeah. She's old.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not sexist. She really is an older
If it was a
woman.
guy, we would think
that he's old. And a lot of progressives are, afraid that you may not have a Democratic president once Obama gets out of the White House. And if something happens to her where she gets sick or she has to leave the bench, and you have someone like, just an example, Marco Rubio or Christie or Jeb Bush, you are going to stack the court in the favor of conservative principles.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that, people? Did you hear that? He said yes.
Yeah, so a lot of people have the thought that, she needs to step down, to the point where, when they give these speeches and they go to campuses and talk, she's actually addressed it. I mean, that's how loud the drumbeat got for her to step aside. And to her point, she's like, look, as long as I can serve, I'll be there. It's a lifetime appointment. I am not required to leave just because you think I'm old and I may get sick and die on the bench. I mean,
exactly.
I can stay.
Now, keep my job.
Clarence Thomas, on the other hand,
Scandal.
if he got sick, I'm not wishing any sickness on him.
Right.
Clarence Thomas.
Oh, God.
Don't do that. But even when he was talking about Scalia, with him shaking his head like, you can't do that. That right there is just plain and Jane disrespectful.
But to be fair,
how's that fair?
How many presidents are calling out the Supreme Court on the cases that they're doing?
He has to.
Doesn't have to do that.
But you know what? I think to his point, or to Mr. Smith's point, is
it's not. That's
they
not
can
protocol.
get up. President Obama can get up there and burn the bridge down when it comes to the Supreme Court of the United States and say, you everybody up here is terrible. They're supposed to remain stoic. Because, the thought on them is that they have balance, they understand nuance, they are supposed to be the legal scholars, and nothing political or partisan exactly is supposed to impact them. And for him to shake his head, a lot of people say, oh, well, okay, there you go. Right. That's the reason why, is because he's a Republican and he's conservative. On the other side of that is we can view it, especially if you're a Democrat, that they were the ones making all the noise on this case. As far as Hobby Lobby is concerned, that came from the left. So honestly, I could not silence it. That's how loud it was, and it came from those who I, on my card, politically identify with. And I'm just thinking, would you just shut up so that I could understand what's going on, instead of hearing it's a war on women and these 5 justices who are men are taken away. And I said, all right, well, if that's the case, well, let's find out and give facts to what you're talking about, instead of being so sensational, because that's when you get drowned out. And, for a lot of people on the left, you are the first ones to criticize those on the far right of doing the same thing, and you're exhibiting that same behavior. And people in the middle, if you're a moderate, you're just like, I'm drowning. I'm drowning because it's so hard for me to find, to your point, you have to dig so far just to get to the truth, because everything on the fringes is taking up all the space.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll see, man. It's November 2014. They're trying to make a change, man. The Senate is trying to turn Republican rather than
the Supreme Court actually made a decision
Democratic.
on his recess appointments that I wanted to ask him about.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, they did.
Yes.
They but from what I read, which is why I wanted to ask him about it, it really doesn't make a difference legally. The Supreme Court said, yeah, you can't really do this, but from what I understand, it doesn't matter. But I didn't get,
here's the thing I found interesting about that is it that it was a unanimous decision? That's what I found interesting.
I think
It was
politically,
unanimous.
I think, again, if you view these through a political lens, then it's always, it's either unanimous or it's a split decision, like 5-4 or 9-0. And when you look at it 9-0, it's like, whoa, well, he must have really been doing something wrong. And then legally, you know, if you're able to decipher the language and the verbiage, then you're like, all right, well, maybe he was. And then when you read on the other side, yeah, but, you know, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't,
Okay,
because
well,
they're still there. They're still in office. They're not going to be
Because
taken
apparently
out.
he can still make those types of appointments when I guess the Senate is, I don't know, man.
It was.
Well, they said, don't get me the line.
Yeah. for those that don't know what we're talking about here, just to give you some perspective, this happened, we're talking a couple of years ago now, where the president, there was a big fight that happened because the president appointed some gentlemen to some cabinet, not cabinet positions, but
Some of those positions are not necessarily low level, but
Yeah.
they need confirmation from the
they
Senate.
need confirmation
Yeah.
from the Senate in
And
order
there
for
was
them to be
gridlock
there.
and deadlock, and he said, all right, I'll tell you what, when y'all go home for Christmas,
I'm going to appoint these
I'm
people.
going to.
Push the button.
He pushed the button. And basically, they were upset at the time because he pushed the button and appointed these gentlemen into their respective positions. And now the Supreme Court, 2 years later, has said that actually, in time, the Senate was not in recess as the president claimed at the time. And they basically said he was wrong for doing that because the president cannot appoint people when the Senate is actually not in recess. And it sort of suggested that he can't say that they are, which is at least what they suggested at the time. Is he said they were in recess, so he did what he did, where they said we weren't in recess, but it was all a big political game anyway
It's
that they
always
were
that
playing, that they were playing or
It's
whatever.
exhausting.
So, but I just found it interesting that that again it was a 9-0 decision as opposed to a split decision. I would
It's
think
either
something like
5-4
that.
or 9-0. That's
I would
all-
think
that's- you
something
get
like that
all
would
the
be
time.
split just because, you know, we talk about how the justices are typically riding for a particular
Yeah.
when they make their decisions. We say that all the time.
Yeah.
So to think that the people who ride for the Democratic Party, if you will, would dissent and say, oh, he was wrong. It was just like, wow, okay.
I just
I
think
guess
with
we're
the
not
law,
riding all the time.
I think with the law, especially the Constitution, it's everything is so subjective. Because you can find type of legal writing or loophole to support your position. And when we think about the Supreme Court and some of the decisions that they made, I'll give an example. Justice Sotomayor gave a speech and said that she thinks that the United States is going to face unrest in the streets if we do not fix income inequality. You won't find Scalia or Justice Thomas, you know, giving speech
Opinion.
with that type of direct language. Where on the other hand, she's a Democrat, or you know, she's viewed as such. She's progressive. That's why Obama named her to the bench, and she's out there, you know, trumpeting the horn, saying, "Hey, if we do not fix what's wrong with America, especially when it comes to the wealth gap, we're gonna have a war in the streets, and that's going to be a big problem." So, you know, ideologically, you're looking at that and you're like, man, like that's a really strong statement to make. And then I can guarantee you, if you ask, you know, if you were able to inject some truth serum into Clarence Thomas and actually get him to talk, he would say absolutely not.
He would say.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I can guarantee you that.
Just because he would say, absolutely not.
man,
just
don't get
to-
him started on affirmative action.
Send it back, man. We don't
Oh.
need that stuff no more.
See, that's why you don't need to be on the Supreme Court. Right there. No.
Who's
Jimmy
it
Smith.
helping anyway?
They tearing it down. They tearing it apart. So,
It's time for us to help ourselves, Ms. McCray. It's time for us to bring ourselves up because trust me, the policies and the procedures that are in place are not helping us. I mean, I'd be remiss though. Before we go, I just want to acknowledge today represents the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. So I did definitely wanted to mention that and the historical perspective that presents. Certainly that has changed the lives of Black people in particular, you know, tremendously. Of course, there's a lot of work to be done still, of course, but just that act certainly has brought a lot of different changes for the better. And
voting
of course, and of course, there's a lot of people who died and fought for us to get those rights. So we want to, you know, represent those people and remember them and the things that they've done. You know, I listened to, what's this guy's name? Al Sharpton.
Oh gosh.
Listen to Al Sharpton today.
On purpose?
Oh no, it was in the car. It was in the car. And so he was talking about it, and one of the things that he noted was to remember. You talked about voting rights, and the things that, of course, people died for us to have the rights that we have today, and we know as a culture, as a society, we typically don't take advantage of these rights. And he just kind of reflected on that and how we really should be taking advantage of our voting. I call it a responsibility. We should be voting to at least let our voice be heard. August 26th. August 26th is your next opportunity to do that, and to choose who is going to be representing who in the different, for Democratic positions, for Republican positions coming up in November. For the county commissioner seats, there's no particular affiliation, Democratic or Republican,
it's all nonpartisan.
But you certainly still need to choose who is going to fight the top two candidates, I believe is the way it works. Is that correct, sir?
Yep.
The top two candidates that get the top most votes come August will be the two candidates will be on the ballot in November. So August 26th, people, August 26th. We need to go out, represent, and vote for whatever you believe, man. I don't care. Democratic, Republican, Independent,
whatever
Tea Party,
whatever you believe.
Whatever you are.
Make sure you're educated, though.
Exactly, yeah. Find out who's running in August. Read some stuff. Go to the internet. Find out who these candidates are. And, hey, vote. That's what I'm saying. Vote, people. You got to vote August 26th. One other thing before we leave, we talked last week and we mentioned Jeremy Meeks and the sad state of affairs that America's in as it relates to this man.
Hey, what's wrong with Jeremy?
Not you.
The foolishness continues. Okay. It's official. The man has a modeling contract.
Actually, I don't think that's foolish.
It could be a second
I was just gonna say that. What's wrong?
Jimmy.
He was in prison for a while. And from what I understand, according to his wife, a few times, he was in the house and he had guns, but whatever.
Yeah.
If this gets him out of jail, gets him some money, he gets his life on track, then bravo.
And that's what it's all about.
Bravo. But the other side of that, if it gets him out of jail and gets him some money, he just goes back to doing worse than he was before. Then, but I mean, if a mug shot can get you a come up,
hey.
I'm down.
Right.
Hey, what do I need to do?
This is the advantage of social media right here.
Absolutely.
That man was
Is that what it was?
Take full advantage of it. Y'all making me want to go get a makeover and just post pics for no reason.
That man was fine.
Let me go get a cut. He all right. He might be able to carry my shoes, but I'm just saying. His name Jeremy, so that helps him out a little bit. But I'm just saying. I mean, come on, man.
He was fine.
Hey, everybody that's a friend of mine, just post pics of me with my kids.
Okay.
Hey, you never know.
Hey, that'll give you something. Give me the Father Year on Tom Joyner or something. I don't know.
I also read, I don't know how true it is, but a tattoo removal company offered to remove some of his tats as well. I don't know how true that is.
I can get that come up. I mean, seriously, he got arrested.
Take it how you can get it. That's
yes. Got a modeling contract, gonna get his tattoos removed, probably those gold teeth that he had.
Yeah.
How
he
dope
can get
of
his
a come
teeth
up is
fixed.
that?
Like, I mean, it could be a real change, and he would have an awesome story. But
now, if he leave his wife, then
well,
come on.
And I want to apologize for my absence last week. I was with my best friend, Beyonce Giselle Knowles Carter.
Your best friend?
My best
said
friend.
middle name
and
everything.
I was
Your
in
best
Miami.
We're praying for you. That's all I'm saying.
Enjoying.
If you think Beyonce is your best friend.
Yes, we're
We're praying for you.
BFFs. We're
We're praying
BFFs for life.
That's all I'm saying.
She was fantastic.
In the
So
name of
pardon my absence, real family.
Man,
I missed you guys.
delusional.
But I was with my girl.
Yes.
We thank y'all for listening, man. This is your host J Real signing off. We'll see y'all next week. Real Family Talk. This is WOKB 1680 AM, your urban empowerment and inspiration station, y'all. Have a good night. You can follow us on Facebook, Real Family Talk. You can follow us on Twitter, Real Family Talk. The website, realfamilytalk.weebly.com.
WOKB, Winter Garden, Orlando.
You keep on